Hi Cancer, welcome to your June 2024 horoscope. June should feel a little bit more calm than what April and May felt like. To be fair, April and May were crazy. We had eclipse season, we had Jupiter entering Gemini, and now in June, we have Mars entering Taurus, so hopefully that should help calm down a little bit of the drive and action and motivation in all of us. And we also have later in the month, the Sun and Venus entering Cancer, so hopefully that should also bring a little bit more of this nurturing, introspective energy. One of the first aspects that I want to talk about in regards to June is Jupiter trining Pluto. So Jupiter at the end of May entered the sign of Gemini, which is your 12th house, Cancer. And Jupiter trining Pluto is actually a really interesting way, a really interesting first conversation to have with this new transit with Jupiter in your 12th house. When we're talking about Pluto, we're talking about the fears that we have. And I really see this transit as this idea that a lot of the times it's our own fears that are holding us back from achieving some of the greatest things in our life, from achieving our greatest power and purpose. Another interesting conversation that this transit brings up is that sometimes we have to let things go in order for us to get better things into our life. A lot of Pluto is about letting go, coming to terms with the death of things as well. So if you want to catch into more detail what Jupiter in Gemini means for you specifically, I did a live where I talked about all of the 12 zodiac signs and what they can expect. So I do recommend clicking on this right here and then going ahead and watching that in greater detail. However, for the context of this transit, you have to let go of your fear of vulnerability. You have to let go of any fears that you might have around trusting others, letting others see the deepest, darkest parts of you, and start to embrace this scary feeling of being reliant on others, whether physically, emotionally, financially, mentally. Those are some of the fears that are holding you back from reaching the great opportunities, the great benefits that Jupiter has in store for you in the upcoming year. Now, let's talk more about the Sun and Venus, because the Sun and Venus are just moving right along in June. So they're going to touch a lot of different planets. They're going to have a lot of conversations throughout this month. So this is definitely something that's going to be on top of mind. First off, we start with the Sun and Venus sextiling the North Node, which is happening on June 3rd. The North Node in Aries has been asking all of us collectively to become more brave and to face the things that scare us. And for you specifically, Cancer, because the Sun and Venus are in your 12th house, they are asking you to face the fear that you might have of things that are beyond this physical world. The fear that you might have with letting go of control, maybe the fear that you might have around spirituality or getting in contact and admitting that there's something beyond what we see here and now. And this day might especially ask you to be courageous and bold in facing some of these reservations that you might have. Just a day later, on June 4th, the Sun and Venus do become conjunct in your 12th house. So I really see this sort of super quick sextiling the North Node conjunction between the Sun and the Moon as an immediate benefit that we might see if on June 3rd and around that time we face this fear whatever it is that's coming up for us, we see that there might be some sort of beautiful reward, beautiful benefit, beautiful consequence as a result of how we show up. And for you specifically, it's a gift that you might have, a gift that you might receive in regards to your spirituality. It's a gift where you might feel more in touch than ever with this idea that what we see in front of us is not everything, that there is a connection to something greater or a greater purpose for all of us. The benefits, the gift that the conjunction with Sun and Venus might bring for you is also a compassion, a beautiful understanding for compassion for the rest of humanity and the connection that we all share with each other. And your 12th house will continue to be highlighted during this month, Cancer. We continue on June 6th with a new moon in your 12th house in the sign of Gemini. And one thing to keep in mind about this new moon is that both the Sun and Venus are getting closer and closer towards a square with Saturn. They are not exactly squaring Saturn during the new moon. They square Saturn 2 days later. But because the aspect is applying, the aspect is becoming closer instead of further apart, you will most likely still feel this restrictive Saturnian energy. So it might feel like you want to start something new in some new activity, some new experiment that will help you remove yourself from daily worries. Maybe you want to start meditation. Maybe you want to start carving more intentional alone time by yourself where you can contemplate things and reflect and come back to yourself. But because of the restrictive Saturn energy, it might not go so easily, at least at the beginning. You might feel like things are coming in the way, that you planned some time to be alone and reflective, but all of a sudden something came up that required you to be around other people. You plan to get a meditation in every morning, but somehow something always happens that pulls you away from it. One piece of advice that I always share when it comes to Saturn is not to become discouraged, which I know is easier said than done. With Saturn, we have to keep in mind that we can still get to our end goal. We just might have to get there, though, through a different approach, take a different path to get there. So the square with Saturn happens, like I said, 2 days later. On June 8th, Venus squares Saturn. And on June 9th, the Sun squares Saturn. So it's really from the new moon up until June 8th and 9th, you will continue to feel the restriction building up. And it might reach a crescendo around those 2 days, around the 8th and the 9th. And one thing that's really interesting about June 9th is that on that day, we also have Mars entering the sign of Taurus. So Mars is leaving your 10th house and entering your 11th house. And Mars in Taurus will calm things down a little bit. Mars in the sign of Taurus will also contribute to this feeling of our actions being a little bit slower, our motivations being a little bit more oriented towards rest and nurturing and peace rather than doing things or achieving things. So this new energy with Mars might also make this whole time around the new moon a little bit more calm, slow, focused on slowing down. Honestly, don't feel like you have to fix anything or get anything new started around this time, and really give yourself the permission to take it slow and to take a break. There is one more important transit to talk about with Mars. This is happening on June 11th when Mars squares Pluto. And this is actually potentially one of the most tense aspects of the month of June. Mars is can be quite explosive. Pluto deals with all of the things underneath the surface, all of the things that we prefer not to face because they're not so pleasant. And having a square between the two might really trigger some of these feelings that we don't want to face, some of the things that we've been avoiding. And for you specifically, Cancer, because this is highlighting your 8th and 11th house, it could be that the actions you're taking, the goals you are pursuing to direct your life in a new way. Maybe there's some goals you're pursuing to get a new job, or some goals you're pursuing in order to move to a different country. All of this sort of future thinking, future-oriented energy that Mars is bringing is triggering some parts of you that are scared of vulnerability. There's something inside of you that when you start planning for the future, you start to realize that, hey, having people that you love around you is a really important part of that future. And that might start to scare you. It might start to scare you that you need to rely on people, that you might plan a future with somebody else, and you have to do that knowing that they could leave at any moment. You have to do that knowing that they could die at any moment. And these can be some really heavy and dark things that Pluto brings up around the vulnerability that we all put ourselves in when we get really close with another human being. So this might be really top of mind for you around June 11th. All right, after all that tense talk, let's get back to Venus and the Sun again. So Venus and the Sun have been just flying through Gemini, as I said. And on the 16th, Venus is actually at the final degree of Gemini, ready to enter the sign of Cancer, or your first house. But before it does that, it squares Neptune. And because the Sun is literally right behind Venus, just a couple of days later, on the 20th, the Sun also squares Neptune as it's in the final degrees of your 12th house. So both of these days, give or take a couple of days, so between the 17th to the 20th, you might especially be becoming aware of any delusions that you might have around your beliefs. Any beliefs that you might have that are not grounded in reality, the beliefs that are sort of like with your rose-colored glasses on, it's sort of this idea that, well, everybody is loving and nobody can hurt me. That's sort of very much a Neptunian type of belief. But some of these might be coming to the forefront. And especially because you have been doing all of this wonderful work to get in touch with the spiritual part of you in the month of June. While you're doing that, it might be triggering and making it really apparent what belief systems don't fit you anymore. What belief systems are not grounded in reality? It could also be belief systems that are negative as well, that are not grounded in reality. The belief system that you're not capable of achieving your dreams, that achieving dreams only happen to lucky people and not to somebody like yourself, for example. So be really open and listen to what's coming up during this time. Right after they finish their squares, Venus and the Sun move into your first house, or the sign of Cancer. So on the 17th, Venus moves into Cancer, and a couple of days later, on the 21st, the Sun also moves into Cancer. So hopefully from then on, you'll find some of your energy shifting away from internal focus, focusing on your spirituality. And there might be a part of you that wants to go out a little bit, show yourself to the rest of the world, show yourself as a strong, capable individual, and not be afraid to step into more of a leadership role. And having the Sun and Venus in your first house is actually really wonderful for you, Cancer. So you might find that things just flow a little bit more from the second part of the month onwards, that you're attracting a good attention as well. So I really hope you enjoy that. And we start off this Cancer season also with a bang because right away on the 22nd, we have a full moon in Capricorn. So the moon is going to be in Capricorn in your 7th house, while the sun is in your 1st house of Cancer. So this is again highlighting this axis of you, individual, leader, versus you in a relationship, trusting, dependent on others, connecting, and being reliant on others as well. And full moons can mean that you get some sort of clarity around a topic. And specifically for you, your relationships might be teaching you something during this time, might be making a new fact apparent for you regarding who you are as an individual, how you show up in the world. So really be open during this full moon and take notice at any of the new things you are learning about yourself. So we're not done talking about Venus just yet. She has 2 more transits in the month of June. On June 26th, Venus squares the nodes. If you remember at the beginning of the horoscope, we talked about on June 3rd, Venus will sextile the North Node. And now at the end of June, Venus will square the nodes. So you might see some of the same topics coming up around you being asked to be courageous and to face the things that scare you. However, at the beginning of the month, because Venus was in the 12th house, you were being asked to face any of the subconscious beliefs, any of the spiritual beliefs that you had that were scary, to be courageous in that area of your life. Whereas at the end of the month, because Venus is in your 1st house, you're being asked to face the fears that you might have around you standing out as your own individual, around you being a leader, around you being in the spotlight. And the final transit with Venus in the month of June is happening on June 28th, when Venus sextiles Mars. Mars is in your 11th house and Venus is in your 1st house. And this is actually a really nice aspect to have between these 2 planets. I see this day as the leadership that you've been displaying, the bright, strong, independent way you've been shining and showing up in the world is helping you with the direction of life you want to go in. If I had to give an example, I would think of you being at a party and not being afraid to put yourself out there, to talk to people, to get to know strangers. And as a result, you meet somebody that can actually give you a really important piece of information and connect you in some way to the path where you want to go, to the job that you want to take, to the community that you want to get involved with. So this could be actually a really nice way to close off the month. We cannot, though, talking about closing off the month, we cannot close off the month until we talk about the last transit of the month, which is Saturn going retrograde. I know, we save the best for last. So Saturn has been in Pisces since March of 2023. And for a while then, since March 2023, you have been considering how you can be more mature with your beliefs that you have. How you can mold your beliefs to become more grounded in reality, to become more adult-like. And now that Saturn is going retrograde, you will be having some time to reflect. Reflect on the actions you've taken, on the things that have been happening. And you have time until November, so there's no need to rush. And after November, when Saturn goes direct, you will have a chance to try it again, to continue this story of learning maturity surrounding your beliefs. So I hope you are excited for the month of June, Cancer. Thank you so much for joining me for this forecast. Let me know in the comments, are you excited for Saturn to go retrograde? I am very curious to hear from you. And I also want to let you know that I'm doing a giveaway. When we reach 1,000 subscribers on the channel, I will give one of you a free reading. So if you want to make sure that you qualify for that, then make sure you subscribe. I hope to see you again soon.